All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today for Engaging Architects, Trends and Forecasts in Building Envelope Products. We're going to do some quick intros, go over today's learning objectives, and then we'll go ahead and get started with today's presentations. All right, so starting off here with our agenda, first up, we're going to hear from Max Perlstein. He's a BPM marketing expert and managing partner at Sole Source Consultants. Then after that, we're going to hear from Dave Lamont about how to win the architect's mind share. Dave is former CEO of Revit and the current executive chairman of Acelab. And then finally, we're going to hear from Vardhan Mehta about leveraging technology to build collaborative architectural relationships. Vardhan is an architect and the co-founder and CEO of Acelab. At the end of today's session, we'll have some time for Q&A, so please feel free to submit any questions to the Q&A chat throughout today's presentation. We'll have some time to discuss those out loud. You can also raise your hand towards the end of the presentation if you have a question you'd like to ask out loud. We'll keep our eyes on that. All right, moving on to today's learning objectives. So first off, we're going to be talking about adapting and how the rest of 2024 is shaping up and which segments will see growth. After that, we're going to move on to evolving, diversifying your offerings based on the product trends that architects and developers are utilizing more of. Then we're going to learn how the available educational resources can help you train and retain your workforce. And finally, we're going to talk about innovation and leveraging technology to build and foster collaborative architectural relationships. All right, looks like we've got a good amount of folks who have joined already. So with that, I would love to hand it over to Max. I'm going to stop my screen share. Max, feel free to share your screen whenever you're ready and get us kicked off.
Okay. All right, Bo, thank you so much. And let me get this started. All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Max Perlstein. I'm the managing partner of Sole Source Consultants. I want to thank Acelab for having me here and putting this together. I'm excited to speak to you for about the next 20 minutes on trends and forecasts and building envelope products, but I'm honestly more excited to listen to Dave and Vardhan afterwards. Nothing like a warm-up act talking about the main acts that way, but I feel that way. What they have is going to be very interesting, and I look forward to hearing that. But I do have some good things to share with everybody. Some good news, some bad news, some other, and some trends and so on. Also some resources. So let's get started. For those of you who don't know me, again, my name's Max Perlstein. I've been in the glass industry myself since 1991. My family, though, has been in this business since 1898. My great-grandfather came over from Russia with $34 and a glass cutter in his pocket and started to produce glass in Philadelphia way, way back then, delivering glass by bicycle in some cases and horse-driven carriage. It's basically in my blood, the glass industry, mostly from the fabrication side. When I started in 1991, I started with Perlstein Distributing PDC Glass and Metal Services in Cheswick, Pennsylvania. That company now is now a part of the TrueLight world of companies. I also spent time with Vitro America before starting Sole Source Consultants in 2011, where I help companies with marketing, communication strategy, sourcing, you name it. When it comes to the glass industry, I do it. And I love this industry. I have a podcast and a blog, and I'm completely active within the National Glass Association, which you'll hear about in a little bit. All right, so let's dig into today. As you saw, the learning objectives, I kind of took them and made my own. Adapt, evolve, learn, and innovate. On the adapt, I'm going to take a look at some of the forecasts and the indexes, go through the good, bads, and uglies there. Evolve, products. I love products. I probably didn't get to all the ones I want to talk about, but I think I hit the high points. Learn where the resources are. Some of you on this call will know some of those resources. Some of you may not, and I hope I can give you some food for thought there. And then innovate is really where I'm going to take it and point to Vardhan and Dave and what they've got going on with Acelab, because I'm a big believer in the platform. So let's get started. Forecasts. As I've said a couple times already in a very short time, some good, some bad, some ugly. But there are soft conditions, and there's soft conditions all over the place. I just finished recording my podcast for this week, and my guest had said, some places you go to are really busy and some are fighting for work. And it has been that way for a little bit out in the marketplace. And so there are some reasons for it, but and there are some not reasons for it. It's kind of fluky, but there are some areas that are good and some that are bad, and some people are making the best of it no matter what. So let's talk about what's good first. On the good side, we're looking at some of the forecasts. Education and the building and the education side. These are my forecasts that I've taken, and I've been able to work with other analysts and consensus forecasts and kind of put this together for the best view of the 2024 and into 2025. And I'm seeing on the education side, this also includes universities, up 8% this year and up 6% next year. It may not it may not feel like it through a couple months of this year, but I do think we're going to have a strong finish to 2024 on the education side. A lot of energy there. Healthcare, very, very strong, up 7, up 5. Again, hospitals had a little bit of a moment, and healthcare facilities had a little bit of a moment with some consolidation, some confusion with some of the insurance changes out there, but they have really settled down and really are building with a focus on the future. These numbers might be even too low and too conservative. Amusement and recreation, just look at what Disney and Universal are doing. They're in an arms race, both spending billions. And then there are places like FunSpot USA and others that are in this world. People are still wanting to spend on their time off on amusement and rec, and those totals up 7 and 9%. And then lodging. This is interesting, big numbers. And reason is this is catching up. A typical lodging would have a 7-year process where they would refresh their hotels, refresh their everything within their rooms. And that all got put on hold in 2020, stayed on hold in 2021. So this is 2 years worth of catching up. So it kicked back in 2022, and now it's moving forward. And there's just a pent up demand on the lodging side. Just stayed in a place last week where they're going room by room, updating them. It's not, for those of you that are in the glass and glazing side, it's not a ton of glass. You're seeing a lot of showers, but you're seeing more glass on countertops, on desks, shelving, and so on, and also partitions inside the hotel room and lodging, a little bit more than we used to see, but still very positive numbers on the forecast going forward. Now, I have this one going sideways, and they're not great numbers, but on retail and offices, they're not as bad as people think. When I ask people, what do you see retail and office going for this year and next year, usually the numbers are more dire. We see nothing. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be down, but not as down and not as far as people may expect. So I kind of go sideways with this because it's not, in my opinion, bad. We know what we're up against on this. And some of these retail numbers, I was in Dallas 2 weeks ago. The city of Dallas is struggling on the retail side, but the suburbs are going gangbusters. So sometimes it depends on where you're at. Offices, again, there are more and more people that are talking about getting back to work, more days in the office, slowly but surely. That is starting to hang in there a little bit better than it was a year ago. These forecasts, as I said, a little bit more bullish than what you've seen on the consensus. The next big consensus out of the AIA, where they take everyone's forecast except mine, I haven't reached that level yet of people like Wells Fargo, maybe someday. But their next forecast is coming up in the summer, June, July. So mine are a little bit more bullish. And I also wanted to add in backlogs right now. The general contractor backlog is at 8.2 months. Architects backlogs are at 6.6. So there is work in the channel. So even if you are softer than you would like, there is still work out there for you. Now, unfortunately, there are some bad news and some news that have been frustrating, especially of late. The Dodge Momentum Index is done by Dodge. They work with the general contractors and survey them on the work that they have on the books and on work that is coming their way. They came up with a total of 193.3, and that total is down 3% from last month, down 12% year over year. Not great. On the Architectural Billings Index, painful, as the picture shows, 43.6. The break-even number is 50. And so when 43.6 came in last week, it caught everyone by surprise because the month before it was almost at 50. It was 49.5. There was a feel like this was headed in the right direction. And really what the reasoning is a month ago, there was hope that rates would be cut and we would have a rate cut soon. And that changed. And the rates aren't going to be cut, possibly going to go up. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. That scared some people and scared this Architectural Billings Index survey. So again, it came down from 49.5, not great. And also not great, the Project Stress Index. That is a weekly composite that comes out that talks about jobs that are either delayed, on hold, or abandoned. And it's pretty interesting. If you see where we're headed, we're starting to hit numbers that look really similar to what's on that left side of that graph in the dog days of 2020. Not great. So delayed, on hold, and abandoned up 4, 6, and 7%. And that's something we have to keep watching. Delayed and on hold don't worry me that much. Abandoned, that does. We don't like anything that's abandoned. We don't want people walking away from projects. Delayed, we've seen that. Everybody that's probably on this call has dealt with delays and holds. It just slides the backlog, and a lot of people are used to that sliding backlog, but this is something to keep an eye on. Overall concern, as I mentioned real briefly earlier, was that the rates. And Jamie Dimon, who everyone seems to love to hear from JP Morgan Chase, he's questioning it. He's had a couple different podcasts and different interviews out there. And you see the quote on the screen. He's seeing it very, very harshly, that we may not get a rate reduction. In fact, we may go up. And so that quote in red is the thing that I think scares a lot of people. And I think that quote in red may have been partly responsible for those architectural billings index on taking a dive last month. So it's something to keep in mind. However, I never want to end on a bad note, never end on a bad note, never go to bed mad sort of thing. And so there was some good news. The construction industry confidence report came out. Their break even is 50. They're at 52 in Q1. It was up 10 points from the last quarter in 2023, which is great. It's not where we were in 2021 when things really started to kick back in with confidence of where we were going, but still better than most people think. There is a lot of confidence out there. There's a lot of optimism. And the quote from the chief economist there kind of plays it up there. Despite everything that's going on out there, contractors have a greater conviction regarding likely growth in sales, employment, and profit margins. So I take that, you look for these positive moments and you jump on them. And to me, I think we are headed in a positive direction. And part of that is how we all handle that. And how do you handle that? Well, I'll get to that in a moment. One thing I wanted to add real quickly was the supply chain. For those of you out there, this is the picture of the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. Just as a heads up, it is still a mess over there in Baltimore. They have 3 temporary channels open right now. They're temporary. The port is only working at 15% of capacity. All of our other ports in the United States are really being stretched thin. There could be a supply chain crisis once again in the building products industry, depending on what products have to be shipped in. There's a lot of nearshoring done, but there is a lot of products that do come from overseas. And so that may affect you. So I urge you that if you do get products that are being shipped in, be proactive and get in front of that, because you may run into something just because the offshoot of this bridge accident really hasn't even started to affect the rest of the world yet. So stay tuned. Now, getting to the point of evolving and staying ahead of these tough times. I use a couple different words, but they all basically mean the same. Diversify, vary, differentiate, be different, and set yourself up for success that way. And so I'm going to go down the products that I think are hot right now, products that people are getting into, products that architects are asking for, products that developers want. And you see them on the screen. We'll go through them one by one. All right, so VIG, vacuum insulated glass, is rocking hot right now. Vitro pretty much leading the charge there. A bunch of other people involved. Guardian just jumped in. The tech is getting better. It is really, really a strong product for retrofit, and it is a high performance energy product, and one that's got a lot going on behind it. A lot of focus and a lot of positive. Vacuum gas is a gasket specifically for this, and so there's really no excuses now to get into it. This product's come a long, long way, and people really, really are getting excited about it. Bird friendly, the excitement has been there, and I have more on the screen. And it's because it is unbelievable how many options there are, how many people are doing it, how it's out there, and it is not going anywhere. Our friendly bird friends, they're being protected by the glass and glazing industry. And if you are not in this sort of business, you're probably missing out, because the ordinances and guidelines are here to stay. Ballistic, unfortunately, and forced entry for all the wrong reasons. It's a shame that we have to have protective glazing, but we do. And that's the way of the world right now. We have them in schools and other areas. The pictures that I'm showing are both very interesting to me. On the top is from Ballistic Glass and Armor Solutions in Texas. That is the first of its kind all glass ballistic entrance. There have been some other all glass entrances, but have been more framing types and not like the typical heavy glass door. So that's a beauty. And then at the bottom in Chicago, that's Access Guard from Global Security Glazing and ISA Klima out of Pennsylvania. And a lot of retail organizations, a lot of downtown places, looking for it for forced entry, looking for protective of their products and of their people. And with some unrest in the country, potentially this summer and this fall, more and more companies looking to get into that. Ballistic is a moving product and more people, again, getting into it. Railing, speaking of people getting into it, Portals this week just announced that they're getting into the railings business. They're known for their shower enclosure hardware. So more and more folks are getting into it. Natural light is a big play on the railing side. Showers and wet rooms. For those of you working in the residential side, I don't understand the wet room standpoint of having the tub and the shower in the same place, and especially this one that has 2 shower heads and the tub. I would probably spend way too much time trying to run from one side of the shower to the other, but it is something that is very popular these days. The HGTV revolution of showers and wet rooms doing very well. And in the same light, same hardware, same approach, but now other part of the house. Glass has a really good move with wine closets. And again, these look like a shower enclosure, but they're there for your wine. Again, with great hardware, great glass, easy for the glass and glazer to offer. Sustainability as an overall is a big piece. Gensler, one of the most respected architectural firms around, they call it a non-negotiable trend. So, know what's sustainable, understand what's sustainable, EPDs, HPDs, get yourself caught up on that net zero. I have a question mark. I do think it's going to go and continue to grow. So you want to maybe, understand that a little bit, but sustainability, big play out there. Daylighting, natural light rules. This is from Super Sky out of Wisconsin, a beautiful project down in Texas. Natural light shown to be very good for health and welfare. And that benefit is really carrying on for more and more people putting in the skylight. Laminated, goes into a lot of things I just mentioned, and one of the better options to produce it is a machine from Berkel, one of the first of its kind to produce laminated glass with great efficiency, great quality, and energy savings. And then same with on the energy side, spacers. Triple glaze has become very popular in the Northeast and up into Canada. So you want a spacer that can actually fit that third piece of glass, and then TPS or a thermoplastic spacer, including more and more companies, including the new company up in the Northeast that Glass Enterprise just took over in Connecticut, are using the TPS. It is really strong on the energy side. So again, some great products that if you're a fabricator, you should be looking into, and if you're a glazer, you should be asking for. Last on this level, ADUs, accessory dwelling units, very popular in California. This is the she shed, as you might remember from some of the commercials back in the day. Beautiful setups with a lot of glass in it. And basically, this is because of those interest rates. We talked about a little bit earlier that they may not be going anywhere. So people are kind of stuck in their homes on the residential side. So they're deciding, hey, if they have a little bit of extra land, they're building something on their backyard, in their wherever they can put it. If they have people moving back in, whether it's their parents moving back in with the kids moving back in with the parents, it's an additional dwelling unit, and it does use glass. The trends that Glass Magazine saw, the one I really want to call out is jumbo glass. Nobody does it better than people like W&W out in New York. They're doing a project right now that is mind-blowing. So you see a lot of jumbo glass out there. The numbers on the screen, the green numbers mean they went up from last year. Red went down. Really surprised that jumbo went down because architects like those large spans, but I think still at 56%, it's a legit trend. You see them on the screen. The one that I do laugh about, the antiviral, antibacterial, that's the last vestiges of COVID. Obviously, that is moving on, but some of the trends there from Glass Magazine. So learning, got a couple minutes left. LearnWise, there's so many options out there. Work your manufacturers, learn from them, and also learn from things that are out there. If you're a shower door person, if you're doing anything on the shower door side, whether you're a supplier or you're installing them, you're a manufacturer, you need to join the shower door professionals on Facebook. Chris Phillips and his team do a great job. If you need more information on this, let me know, but it will really help you understand that side of the business. Great best practices group there. Also, make sure you're attending different webinars and different groups. Thirsty Thursdays from the NGA. Every month they come up. The Texas Glass Association has a GlassCon coming up in a couple weeks, Glass Conference. That's fantastic. So attend these things. Make sure you're there. And then, of course, the National Glass Association, NGA, has a ton of resources at glass.org. They have a help center if you're a member where you can get everything that you need. Again, this is the way you stay ahead of those down times because you want to learn, you want to do things right, you want to see what's out there. They have all your manuals, everything under the sun to protect you, to educate you, to keep you ahead of the rest of the industry, quite frankly. Their technical bulletins like best practices for bird-friendly glazing design. Hey, if you're getting into that business, you need to have that design guide. You need to understand it, and your customers need to have that. And then training-wise, they have myglassclass.com and the brand new myglassfab.com, which is for training for fabricators, which I know a lot of you on this call are. So that's opportunities for all of you to continue to gain your knowledge in this industry. So quick rundown through all of that sort of thing. And then, of course, one of my favorites is coming up in September, Glass Build America in Dallas. It's going to be a tremendous show, one of the biggest floors we've ever had. I work with the NGA very closely. I'm very excited about this event. If you've never attended a glass build, this would be a great one to attend because Texas really, really shows up for these shows. Unbelievable exhibitors through and through on the floor. Great people who support the industry. Glass Build America, September 30th to October 2nd in Dallas, Texas. So last is the Innovate. And this is what I got excited about, was getting to be on a call with Vardon and Dave from Acelab and learning about how they connect with architects. And the one thing that anybody who knows me, I've always talked about how it's tough to get in front of an architect. It's tough to talk to an architect sometimes. Architects are so busy. Designers are so busy. They've got so many things going on. And then I was introduced to Acelab and I learned about it and saw what it does and how it brings manufacturers and architects together. And it really makes a difference on the innovation side. This is the true innovation when it comes to talking and being involved with the architectural community. So I appreciate everybody listening to me kind of run through my piece. I'm excited to hear what Dave and Vardon say next, and I look forward to any questions after those guys are complete. And so thank you very much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Max. Yeah, before we hand it over to Dave, just want to send everyone a reminder about the Q&A. You can submit any questions you have there throughout the presentation. We'll have some time to discuss those towards the end of the webinar. All right, Dave, whenever you're ready, feel free to take it over.
Vardon, you're going to share your screen?
Yeah, I'll share my screen. Bo, I'm not seeing an option to share sound. Do you happen to know how that works on presentation mode?
If you use the little arrow next to share screen, there might be an option.
Oh, I see. Okay. All good. All right. Let me share my screen now. Okay. Hopefully everyone can see the screen. Share it now.
Okay, great. Well, thanks. Thanks, Max. I learned a lot and I really enjoyed the talk to understand what trends are going on in the industry. A little bit about myself. I'm the executive chairman of Acelab today. Work very actively in the company with Bo and Vardon. Formerly, I've been a CEO of venture-backed startup companies. I've run 5 different venture-backed startup companies. I'm probably best known for my time running Revit. I'm proud of the fact that Revit pretty much has become a standard in the industry today for 3-dimensional parametric design of a building. We really led the movement away from just 2-dimensional design to 3-dimensional design in buildings. And, that was very rewarding. I'm also pretty excited about how Acelab can make a similar change and contribution to the industry, really giving architects a material hub for their business, a central way to manage materials from research all the way through to specification. So, I did learn a lot in my days at Revit, selling product to architects, and I want to share some of those learnings with you. So Verdon, if you can advance to the next slide. I learned a very difficult lesson at Revit, and I think it's one that would be helpful for manufacturers to understand, and maybe some of you do already. But if I start with your business, you're generally going to build products or technologies, and you're going to make a pretty big investment in research and development because you're going to sell the same product multiple times, for many, many years. And then you're going to be improving those products with R&D to build on top of them to sell again, hundreds, thousands of units of those products. And so as a result, manufacturing companies of all types, not just building product manufacturers, make a very large investment in technology and in process improvement. Now, the architects is a service business. Everything is project-based, not product-based. And, I'm sort of stereotyping saying everything is unique, but let's face it, that is what the architect is paid to create something unique. And they're paid for the most part, on an hourly basis. And what that sort of implies is that if there is inefficiency in their process, the customer is likely to pay for that inefficiency. Whereas if there's inefficiency in a product, sales will go down, margins will go down, and the manufacturer will suffer the results of the lack of efficiency. And so as a result of this, a service business, and particularly architects, do not make major investments in technology and education and processes. They make some, obviously, but they do not make it to the level that manufacturing companies come. And by the way, one major learning here that we've brought to Acelab is that Acelab is a platform free for architects. And we've done that for a very specific reason, because we realize that their business model is not really that conducive to these kinds of investments. So we want to have no barrier to entry for an architect to improve their materials workflow with Acelab. If we can go to the next slide. I hate to generalize, but I guess I will. My apologies to any architects on the line today. But I think architects work a tremendous number of hours. They're right up there with lawyers. They're often, at least the younger people in the firm are often, underpaid and, quite frankly, often responsible for material selections, or at least material research. And they are very short on time. And you've all probably experienced this when they need something, they want it tomorrow. But after you give it to them, they may not get back to you once that fire drill is over. And that can be very challenging for everyone. The other interesting thing is that they're risk adverse. So in other words, when architects find a product that works for them, they're likely to use it over and over and over again. And because they know it's working, it's reliable, it's delivered on time, it can be installed, contractor's familiar with it, comfortable with it, and that could be very good for you or very bad for you when you're not what they're comfortable with or knowledgeable about. We also all know that architects do not really like to be sold to, but they do value expertise. They do value someone that can help them make better choices and educate them. But all these are things that we need to take into account when we're trying to engage architects. Now, why bother? I hear some manufacturing companies that I've talked to saying, oh, well, we just work with the contractor. And boy, that couldn't be a bigger mistake. Not that contractors aren't very important to the process, and they do make, as you can see from the research here that the AIA has done, about 27% of the decisions, but the bulk of specification decisions are being made by the architect. Over 70% of the decisions in a building are theirs. And sometimes it's one supplier, sometimes it's multiple like suppliers. But the key then is, how do you get to architects at the right time, at the right moment, when actual decisions are being made, because that is something that's, quite frankly, easier said than done. And I think that is one of the big challenges for building product manufacturers today. I want to stress this point again, that the architect goes with what they know. You're looking at the version 1 of the architect's standards library, a bunch of books, a bunch of spreadsheets, a bunch of stickies, maybe an old suites catalog that has dust on it. But the problem is, because the architect is overworked and risk adverse, they are going to continuously go with the things that they know. And what that means for you is that if you are what they know, you may be very good shape with that firm. But despite the fact that you may have excellent brand awareness in the market, if specific architectural firms are not used to specifying you, they're going to continue to specify your competitors. And so how do you change this dynamic is, I think, an important question that building product manufacturers really ought to be asking themselves. If it's not me, how do I make it me? Go ahead to the next slide, it's fine. So one of the, kind of major marketing techniques that we see building product manufacturers use is the all famous lunch and learn. And we do know that architects love good pizza and are happy to be served lunch. And often building product manufacturers have really interesting products. I mean, we heard from Max today some of the innovations that are coming, and so architectural firms are interested in learning about these innovations. But the cost of these lunch and learns can be really, really high, and I think that a lot of manufacturers are not adding all these numbers up. With 50 attendees times $20 for food, and then maybe a rep or two traveling to a specific architect's office, it can cost over $800 for a lunch and learn. If you start multiplying that by the number of reps and the number of times a year, some firms are spending somewhere between $150 to $450, and we've seen some firms upwards of $800,000 a year in lunch and learns. Now, gee, you might say that's a lot of brand awareness that we're generating, and we're going to get results from it later. And of course, you do sometimes, and you might. But the problem is that the lunch and learn is not necessarily timed with an active project. And if it's not timed with an active project, then the architectural firm may well forget you by the time it comes to having an active project that needs a product like yours. And they may go back to what they know or what they've specified before, which is your competitor's product. So what are the keys to becoming the basis of design, becoming a standard for the architect? And I think that the one thing I can stress for you early, and the most important, is getting there early. Not when it's too late, not when the decision has already been made, but while the architect is still in a discovery phase, trying to find the right product solution that complements their design. So yeah, without a doubt, increasing product exposure and brand awareness is very, very important. But the best way to do that is with architects while they were having projects that need your products. That's the ultimate lunch and learn, quite frankly. Workshops where the architect is reaching out to you because they need to be educated about the needs they have that relate to your products. As I said before, collaborating with the architect as early as possible in design, because that's when your differentiation counts. At the end, with contractors, it may be all about price, and your products may get commoditized. But early on, the capabilities around sustainability or energy performance, those things really matter a lot when and that is the time you want to get locked in to that spec. And ultimately, what you want is a way to become a firm standard. And what you'll hear about a little bit is a very interesting strategy we've developed to create digital firm standards for the architect that lock building product manufacturers in on an ongoing basis to firms that they had not been able to do business with in the past. So with that, let me turn it back over to you, Varden, and talk about some solutions.
Thank you. Stop sharing my screen and just introduce myself. Hard to follow Max and Dave, but I'll try. I'm Vardhan. I'm a second-gen architect. Grew up in India. My dad's an architect, uncle's an engineer, was obsessed with this industry and this practice from a very early age. And then eventually came to architecture school in the US, where I pulled a lot of all-nighters, as you do in design school, and then helped me land a job at a top 10 architecture firm in New York City. There, I worked on projects for the State Department, which were US embassies around the world, and institutional buildings for MIT and Yale. During my time in practice, I was often, or for most of it, I wasn't really focused on what I actually went to architecture school for, but I spent a lot of that time on material research, interacting with manufacturers and suppliers and specifications. And from my experience then in practice and from my friends, and now at this point, we've gathered feedback from over 600 architects. That led to realizing a need for Acelab in the industry to bridge this gap between the architects and manufacturers. I'll share my screen and run through what I'd experienced and what I know a lot of architects that we've spoken to, gathered feedback from, have repeatedly shared with us, which is like some of the common practices right now in the tools and the workflow that architects are using to research product solutions, interact with suppliers, and organize, document all of their decision-making related to products. Some things we hear all the time is like, due to this lack of knowledge, expertise, bandwidth, time, all of the above, architecture firms are often feeling forced into repeating specs or product solutions that they've used in the past. And it's not always the right product or the most optimal product solution. And they're aware of that. But we often tend to reuse these things out of having some experience with them, it being easy to draw, detail, render the same thing again, and being able to know what to expect. Some things, some other feedback we've heard is like oftentimes the hesitancy to engage with new manufacturers or suppliers is often that reps can be unresponsive or unreliable. The research that we end up doing anytime we're researching a product for a specific need and so on easily gets spread out between emails and spreadsheets and notes all over the place, and the data gets siloed, leading to errors or mistakes. A big issue with the spec platforms out there, which I've used, and I'm sure if there's any architects in the room, you may have had experience with as well, is that these are really tools that are meant to document a decision after it's being made. But they're not necessarily tools which are helping you to make the decision in the first place in a way that you can evaluate all your options and be able to seek expert feedback as well. And then finally, at this point in time, there's hundreds of websites for an architect to review and research from, and thousands of manufacturers making tens of thousands of building products. And no architect with high integrity would claim to be an expert in all of them. So what we realized, to start off with Acelab was a common need from the architect for three things. First, a single platform to manage all of their product-based decision-making, education from true product experts in every product segment to be able to advise them on what they need to know related to code, compliance, and other factors related to the project. And then finally, recommendations from experts to help them optimize a product selection based on the cost, aesthetics, performance, sustainability, and so on. And that led to the founding of Acelab. Now, I think the three big things, apart from the platform being like heavily focused on product decision-making as opposed to just documentation, three big things which are like very different in how we thought about this solution in the industry was, first, it needs to be free so that we remove the barrier for any architect, regardless of if it's a top 20 architecture firm or a smaller architecture practice, making a tool that's accessible for everyone. Second, we heard repeatedly from architects that oftentimes the spec tools out there in the market, they can be pay to play, or you can only find data for the products or manufacturers they have a relationship with. So we decided to make, we decided to have all the products available in the US in one single place. and for any architect to be able to do unbiased research from Acelab as like one-stop solution for any of their requirements. And then third, we realized that oftentimes architects, it's not something like related to product selection that's being done in isolation, but rather architects need to share information, their findings, the feedback they've received from folks internally at the firm, and then also with the other stakeholders on a project. So we like realized there was a big value here for the platform to be really open and easy to share across the entire team on the project. And then on the other side of the platform, we also work with suppliers for whom we help them accelerate the product adoption with the right architecture firms for them and for their products. I'm going to share my screen here again with a quick video. Bo, please let me know if the audio does not work, and then we can perhaps include this in the survey after the webinar.
Sure. I am not hearing audio.
Okay, maybe we'll skip it and then we'll just include this for folks to have a look at if they're interested after the webinar. But I think our unfair advantage in tackling this problem in the industry is that we're really a team of architects. And here you're seeing folks like Arman and Andre who registered architects. Dave, who of course has a lot of experience with architectural technology and leading these changes in terms of innovation in the industry. We have folks like Aaron, who's the top spec writer in the US. And I think like that has really helped us understand what is a true solution that would be equally valuable both for the architecture side and the specifier side of the market, and then also for the suppliers and the manufacturers in terms of like what's helpful on both ends to be able to deliver a successful project. One of the things we realized that is really important for this relationship between architects and manufacturers to first start really early in the project and to be incredibly valuable on both ends is for it to be efficient. And we do that in the sense that for every single architect on the platform that is reaching out to a supplier, manufacturer, they want to request information, we make sure that all of the information that the architect would eventually need to share with the manufacturer for the manufacturer, the product experts to be helpful, is readily available. And then this really helps to expedite, instead of the architect having to wait weeks in order to hear back from a manufacturer through their own website or some other source where maybe they don't have the manufacturer available on speed dial, don't have a great years-long relationship with the rep. It makes the process of reaching out to any manufacturer to evaluate a new product, to wrap their head around a new solution, super easy. And so we do this through a portal in the platform, which helps an architect get in touch and request anything for all the products available for a manufacturer in a few clicks. So it really means that anytime an architect is expressing intent to engage with the manufacturer, on the other side, they are aware of like exactly what type of support the architect requires, everything from a price code, lead time, the technical information, product literature, samples, and so on. I think the other thing we realize is that while architects enjoy lunch and learns for its social value and being able to learn about a topic, do a deep dive on a topic in the office, I think we also realize that oftentimes when the architects actually have an urgent need, they want a solution or they want to be able to speak to a manufacturer right away. And so in this case, like with our own Acelab webinars, we've sort of like reimagined the lunch and learn to make it incredibly engaged so that the architects are attending this virtually. It's not necessarily happening at a random time when the manufacturer just happens to have reached out to the architect and the architect may not actually have a good use case for them. But it's really architects attending these events on a topic that's of interest right in the moment when they may be actively researching or specifying a certain type of product. And so this really like leads to that, like the right start of a relationship. And for the manufacturer, the value is like it's incredibly efficient, both from the standpoint of cost and time. Lunch and learns, we found that even if you do stumble upon or you hit architects who are actively specifying something like the solution you offer, it can be really hard to scale that strategy. And so with these webinars, we've seen a big interest from architects, which is also indicative of architects wanting help when they need it, like available on demand or in the moment, so that they don't have to sort of like remember or have to do research to go back to something that they might have heard during a lunch and learn 6 months ago. And the other big thing we like realize in terms of what architecture firms need here is really recommendations from folks who can offer technical expertise in an unbiased way. And so we started offering a program, which is a free program for architecture firms. This was based on the realization that only the top 20 architecture firms in the country may have a technical department in-house or spec writers. But still, these are architecture firms, which is, the bulk of all architecture firms in the US, who are doing meaningfully large projects and who do still require technical support and advice and recommendations. But it's just incredibly hard for them to invest their own time into doing so, since it's not a revenue generating activity for the firm. And so these are folks like who would generally be open to new suppliers, to new solutions, but they find it really difficult to make that a priority in terms of their own time. And so what we started doing is we have this like team of experts who essentially play the role of infinite independent reps. Now we're unbiased in the way that we actually have the partnerships with architecture firms where we're understanding what is it that they require on a project, and then we're helping them to optimize that product selection based on the cost, availability, lead times, and so on. This has been incredibly helpful in that for architecture firms, we're acting as an extension of their team and really helping them to build that institutional knowledge on demand. And then finally, I think our newest product offering, which is in the hands of a few beta user architecture firms, which is the Acelab firm library. So we're helping architecture firms to build a single source of truth, which is accessible for every single architect at the firm, regardless of the location, what type of projects and teams they work on, and really helping them to digitize all the product selections that they've used in the past, they made in the past, all the decisions, who was reviewed, and the notes attached to that. And then also as a way for them to reference and have like an easy place to start in the early stages of a project. I think the advantage with the firm library is that we've seen architecture firms now sort of reach out to the Acelab team and then to manufacturers through the firm library anytime that they're looking for product substitutes, they're interested in a new search, they're value engineering a project, and so on. Stop there. I have another video here, but we'll make sure to include this in the notes after the event as well. I'll pause here and I'll turn it back to Bo, where, to move on to the Q&A section of the webinar.
Great, awesome. So we'll start off with some questions. If anyone has more questions, feel free to drop them in the chat now, or if you have a longer winded question and want to raise your hand, we can unmute you so you can ask it out loud. Starting off with a question for Max. Any comments on Vue bankruptcy and Ubiquitous closing up shop?
Yeah, the Vue bankruptcy was seemingly like it was going to happen eventually. There was some definite warnings that money was running tight. Obviously, they've got a plan to go through the bankruptcy process, come back private. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. It's a tough business, and it's going to be tough for people wanting to follow them on the innovation side. The Ubiquitous thing is relatively new, very unfortunate. Transparent photovoltaic. It's a product I still believe in quite a bit. There are companies like Next Energy that's really strong in it, and Luca AST out of Australia is in it. So there's still some people that I think will step into that space, but definitely disappointing to see on Ubiquitous. Good people, just unfortunately, the runway and it was short, which is too bad.
All right, awesome. And next up, for launching new products this year, do you have recommendations on ways to think about marketing new products during economic stagnation?
I think that you have the combination of the traditional side, where you have to be active in trade shows and so on. But you really have to look outside the box. I mean, that's what kind of led me to Acelab, and it depends on where you're going. If you need to get in front of the architects, it's as Dave and Varden just laid out, it's a great angle. So I think that's obvious. If you're on this call, you're going to see that. But I also think that believe it or not, one of the things that's coming back is traditional mail. It's amazing, that people are getting inundated with email, but they get very little snail mail anymore, and so they actually are reading the mail. So if you send a campaign via mail, and it's a creative campaign, it's catching their eyes, and I have some clients that are doing that with some great success. So, there is the mix of traditional. You also have the new things. Mail's not new, but a newer way for now. Social is always important, but I'm a big fan of Acelab, especially if you want to get in front of the architects. That's a must.
Yeah, we're putting a lot of thought into how we can help people launch new products or to go after new target markets. So the webinar program that Varden mentioned is aimed at that. But the other program, which is a workshop program, is very powerful. The product concierge service that Varden was talking about, not only will they begin to make recommendations of products such as yours, but they'll also create a workshop for you directly with an architect that is looking for a product solution like yours. So that is an ideal way to be educating people in the moment that need to be educated in a market that you care the most about.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next up, do you offer services in Canada? That might be an Acelab question.
I believe that's for Acelab. So yes, we do actually have architects and products on both ends of the platform. Essentially, we are all across North America. I think like one thing that has been really interesting for me to realize as an architect is that just with how much North America changes from coast to coast, there's a lot of education even for architects with a few years under their belt in practice. And so one of the things that the platform is really like trying to do very proactively is educate those architects. And we do this obviously with the platform, where anytime you make a decision, you choose a criteria based on the climate zone or other factors. We're sort of showing the tooltips that might be very helpful for an architect to keep in mind when making their product selections. But then we also do it with the concierge program with our team of experts, and really like helping that fill that gap between the average architect at an architecture firm and the most experienced spec writer, like the folks that we are advising, the partners we have on the architecture side rank somewhere in the middle. And so often there's like nuances that they can bring to the table and really like also loop into their recommendations, which may not be accessible or known to the average architecture firm in North America.
Mm-hmm. All right, next up, so Max had mentioned specific project types that are growing. Any suggestions for how manufacturers can target architects that are working in higher growth sectors?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on that is that this is exactly how we want to engage with the building product manufacturer. So, as a matter of fact, Bo's role at Acelab is onboarding the building product manufacturer into the platform. So one of the first things we do is we have you educate us. What are your target markets? What new product initiatives do you have? What are the type of projects you're looking for? And Bo then brings in our material experts, the architects that make these recommendations, as well as our head of marketing. And so that now we're in a position to know where to position you into the right projects, because there's dozens of projects every hour being opened on our platform. And our job is to match you up with those projects that align with your market strategy.
Something to add to that, Max?
Yeah, yes, sir. Sorry. I think
Okay.
Dave nailed it. And I just think that it's all about understanding what you can do and what you can bring to the project. And I think that it's a no-brainer in some of these areas that you can be the expert and the thought leader.
Right, next up, For manufacturers that traditionally haven't worked with architects directly very often, are there any recommendations on how to retrain sales reps?
I'll jump in here as somebody who has dealt with a lot of sales reps who oftentimes I think it's just like the lack of experience, as whoever asked the question, they noted with the architect channel. So the architects are not the buyers. And I think sometimes sales reps can ignore that fact. So really like what the architect is looking for, which hopefully we've impressed on the audience a few times now, is somebody who can educate them and who can support them throughout the project lifecycle. And those are really the relationships that end up being those lasting relationships, which are also ideal actually from a sales standpoint, because these are folks who trust you and they're not just working with a manufacturer for their brand value, but like really for the team that's behind the products. And I think to train the reps, like we've actually started offering a workshop recently for all the partners because we realize that there's a big demand, and oftentimes the first or second time there's reps entering the space, dealing with the architects very, very in an like initial phase, there can often be some tricks that we can sort of impart on them, some wisdom based on our team of architect and like our experience in speaking with reps. I think like one big takeaway is like whenever you lead with education and knowledge with architects, it's always a hit. And anytime you try to push just your products as a sales rep or a supplier, it can often make the architect doubt the integrity of your advice or your expertise. And so, yeah, I think like that's something we've just sort of like seen repeatedly, both in our experience as architect, but also with the relationships that we've formed with Acelab.
I think one other point is that we have positioned ourselves with the architect as their trusted advisor. And so when we make a recommendation to them, when we make an introduction to them, they can trust that we've vetted it and we're introducing them to someone that can really help. And that puts your salesperson in a favorable position to begin that conversation. Not one where they're chasing them, but one where they're coming in to be an advisor themselves. So I think the combination of our introductions really can help folks that aren't that experienced working with architects to be more effective.
Mm-hmm. All right, looks like we've got time for maybe one more. So with supply chains messed up throughout the year, are there any recommendations on important differentiators to architects other than price?
That's a good question for you as an architect, Varden. The price thing always becomes an issue, but I obviously I'll say, supply chains are an issue, but people more and more care about, delivering when it's supposed to be delivered, and doing what you have to do. Price is one thing I think everybody just takes into account, but if you promise that it's going to be there on the 22nd, it's got to be there on the 22nd. And that's why I brought up the bridge issue, that you've got to stay ahead of those supply chain issues. I think architects, you're an architect, Vardan. I think architects care about the price. They know that it becomes a play. But, I'm curious. I know lead time for a lot of people care, but I would assume it's probably quality and performance, right? Or is it something else?
I think like now more than ever. And I think the reason for that is like when the lead times are out of whack, and let's assume even the pricing, I think like we've generally been seeing architects be more open to alternatives. And so if there's a brand that they've been using for decades, but right now, it would be detrimental for the project to go with their firm standard, I think we're seeing architects be a lot more open to embracing new products, new manufacturers, and so on. And so I think like that's also like a great sign for suppliers who really can sort of like offer a product that's optimal on that project based on the situation right now. And so if it's even that there's two products, one is say the firm standard or the industry standard, and the other one is more sort of up and coming, but they both have same lead times. The latter has higher performance, more aesthetic, it's more elevated from an aesthetic standpoint, more optionality in terms of design. I think like we're seeing architects like tend to more be open to that now than maybe they were, let's say, like 4 or 5 years back.
I would also say sustainability, climate issues are top of mind for architects today. They want to be doing a better job. There are many clients demanding it. And so those are good ways to approach and educating them on how those products can make a difference in the project long term.
Yeah. Yeah. And I said that earlier. Gensler said it's non-negotiable. So good call, Dave. Good call. Good ad.
All right, awesome. Well, with that, we are at time. So just want to thank everyone in the audience for attending today. We appreciate all the great questions. There will be a quick survey when you jump off of today's webinar. So if any other questions come up or you have some other feedback for us, it would be super helpful if you could leave some notes there. All right. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Max.
Thank you,
Brian.
guys.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care.
Thank you,
Have
everybody.
a great week, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.